Coach, how has preparations been this week?
Yeah, very good week. As everyone could probably imagine, very confident, bright, purposeful mindset from the players after a good result. It's always nice to be in and to be working under those sort of circumstances. So we try and take advantage of it as much as we can, and it's been a good week.
Thank you, Coach. We're going to open the room for questions. We'll start with those here at Curry England, and then we'll go on to the Zoom. Drake, go ahead.
Gary, starting with Leal and Fafa and Jacob, Leal having statistically a very strong game in the attack, basically being the key distributor. Fafa gets an assist, Jacob gets a goal. Before the season started, how confident were you in playing all three and allowing all three to exist on the field at the same time? And since game one, how has that affected your confidence in terms of all three being able to be on the field at the same time?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what pre-season's all about, really, is, looking at those combinations and trying to see how that can evolve within the group. I mean, Fafa was added to the team for that reason, to try and give us a different dimension. The circumstances surrounding Randall playing a more central role were obvious ones, but what we have been reminded of is that he is an incredible player centrally. A lot of his work for us has been out wide, but I actually think he's more comfortable in those central areas. He can dictate the pace of the game a little bit more, and certainly put himself into some positions that are tough to deal with, whereas out wide it can be a little bit restricting for him at times. So, I mean, very, very pleased, of course, with the output of all three of those guys. And of course, let's not forget that up front and as a target forward, Teal was terrific on the day. His ability to bring others into the game and his physical presence, I think, gave some of those guys the opportunity to express themselves. So it is about balance, but lovely to see that we've obviously got off to a bright start and a confident one with that group of players out there.
Ray, do you have any follow-up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't see Anibal today. Has he trained this week? And whether he did or not, what's his status and how is he feeling after Saturday?
No, he's not. He's not trained this week. He's slowly but surely progressing. As you probably would imagine, the first few days to let some of that soreness and pain dissipate, and then we start to see the real sort of damage to the area. We have had a scan, and it's telling us that it's not that bad. Hopefully we can get him out on the field next week and we can start to get him moving. And I think what I'm being told by the medical staff is that it'll be a bit of a pain tolerant situation. So we'll get our first real look at where he's at and maybe what we're looking towards at the start of next week, and we may have a better idea towards the following weekend, but it'll be out this weekend.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, CJ's back in, Dax is back in, Hani's back in. How confident are you on them getting to 100% if they aren't yet at 100%?
Yeah, they've had a terrific week's training, all three of them. To be perfectly honest, last week they were pretty much fast-tracked to where they were. All three of them were available, I think I said that. It was my decision not to include CJ and have three guys on the bench that had limited minutes in them. But credit to all of them in the way that they've recovered and the work that they've put in. And they're in a much, much better place. Obviously, Hani is in the most positive of positions because of his minutes last week. And, that will certainly reflect on what we see this weekend.
Bob, go ahead.
Will that be like a game time decision for you to start him?
No game time decisions on this one with Hani. He's fit, he's available, and when you see my team roll out, you'll realise what the situation is.
How much different is New York than last year?
I'm not sure they've changed a huge amount in what they try and do and how they try and play over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer than that. They are a particularly unique group in the way that they play. They're very, very effective in the way that they play. and it's incredibly difficult to play against them because it's so different to a lot of other teams. You know, their intensity and competitive nature is at the very tip of the work that they try and achieve. But I don't think we should, you know, disrespect any of the quality that we still see in the group. They've got some very talented players. You know, Morgan, for me, is one of the best wide players in the league and, you know, more than capable of causing all sorts of problems. And, you know, Cazares in midfield, you know, would be somebody that jumps to mind in the way that he affects the game with the ball as well as without it. But it's a tough outing. There's no doubt about it. You've got to be in the right mindset. We've spent all week trying to put ourselves in the right place to be ready for this group. We feel as though we have enough to, you know, to turn them over on their own patch, which is never easy. But I think that's the confidence in the group.
How much momentum does last week's win give you going into this game?
I don't know about momentum. You know, we've had one game, but confidence for sure. Positivity in the group. It was a good start. It was a terrific attitude. There were some very decent performances throughout the group, and ultimately we've earned 3 important points against what we would describe as a playoff team and a team that's going to be competing for those post-season berths along with us. So all in all, it was a very, very good afternoon's work. I think momentum is built now by going to Red Bull and then coming back to Montreal and putting in back-to-back performances that we can start to see mean something towards you know, our standing within the league again in this Eastern Conference. You know, I think we've got some things to prove again this year. There's a lot of teams that haven't seen us for a season or more, and we need to remind them what we're capable of and what our achievements are going to be this year.
Thank you, Coach. We're going to transition to those on the Zoom. Tim Sullivan.
Hey, Gary, you talked about how you basically know what Red Bull is going to do when you go out there or when they come to visit you guys. How do you kind of, I guess, manage the desire of your team to, you know, not get stuck with the ball at their feet versus not being wasteful by sending it long, things like that against that Red Bull press?
It's a really tough balance. One of their biggest weapons is hurrying the players in possession, regaining the ball from inaccurate work, and playing at a pace and a tempo that is very, very uncomfortable for their opponent. Now, I think there are stages of the game that you can manage. There's no doubt the opening exchanges are intense and fiery. But I do think that there are stages as the game unfolds that with a bit of composure and a bit of focus, you can build some pressure, you can get yourself in the ascendancy, and you can make life difficult. They do have flaws, and they do have weaknesses, like all teams. But to your point, if we get the game planning wrong, then it can play into their hands, and a lot of teams get incredibly frustrated against them because of the way that they play. But listen, we've run into them numerous times. We played them in pre-season. It was no different then. The fact that they'll be a little bit fitter and sharper and, you know, more ready for these league fixtures obviously adds to it. But we've had a taste of what they're about already, and we'll certainly be in the right mental and physical place to do our very utmost to deal with this.
Last time you guys went out there, it didn't go well for you. I know one of the goals was a set piece. It was taken right in front of where I was sitting, which was maybe not where you thought it, or where the foul occurred. But how do you, I guess, plan to kind of change that narrative, given that the last time you guys went to Red Bull Arena, it was a game that you guys couldn't find that foothold?
Yeah, look, I can only say that, like all teams, I think there's a particular way of playing against these. It is a unique game plan. it is a unique team and mindset that needs to be applied, and it's not always, certainly from where I see it, it's not always, the pure way of playing that's going to get results here. So, there needs to be a certain look about the team. It certainly needs to be a certain mentality about the team, and I do think we have more tools, better qualities and abilities that hurt this team. Pace for sure is something that causes them a lot of problems, but it's getting into those positions. It's being able to utilise periods in the game. So it'll be no different to any other game. We just need to be more so on our toes than a lot of others and start off in the right fashion.
And last one from me, you mentioned having CJ available this weekend, and Hani back as well. How important is it to have a guy like CJ that you can play it into up top, or Hani who can kind of dribble through some of that press a little bit? How important are guys with those, skill sets to kind of handle the sort of things that Red Bulls throw at you?
Well, I think you've seen at the weekend, and we're reminded again of Hani's individual quality for the second goal. He'd only been on the field moments and had already got himself to the pace of the game and was sublime in the way that he supplies Jacob for the second goal, and a very instrumental goal. So we know all about that quality. He's back in a good place, which is, obviously very encouraging for the team. I think CJ's addition on this occasion, is as important as any. That physical presence, that ability, as you've said, to not only compete, but I think to secure and to win his own personal battles. I've no doubt at all that the guys you're speaking about are going to have an important impact in this game. And I think it's finding the right times to have those impacts, and certainly taking advantage of them when they come along.
Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, Gary, you've talked about kind of the pace on the wings a good bit, and that had huge effect against NYCFC last weekend. Against a team that kind of plays in a very different style of play. How do you see that pace playing out, and do you expect to be able to? How do you expect to be able to get the ball to them through that press without Annabelle?
Well, look, every team, as I've already said, have a different way about them and a different style, and it certainly is for us to find a solution to the problem. Each week we get presented with a different problem. Last weekend, the New York City group were, a more possessional-based group. Certainly, individually, more pressure put on them to be clean and tidy and manage the ball. This group's the complete opposite. And in our build-up to this game, we've tried to replicate some of the pressure and some of the choices and outlets and decisions that need to be made. But there's nothing like going into the thick of it and when that first whistle blows, the intensity that hits you. It's a little bit like when you read fighters going into the ring and someone says, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and first time he gets hit on the nose, he realises what sort of power the other fighter's got, and it affects his game plan. So it's no different for teams. Obviously, we hope not to be hit on the nose in that fashion, but the simple fact is we have to meet the challenge that they present to us physically and athletically head on. And if we can prove to them, which I've no doubt we can, that we can compete in the way that they play, I think we have the tools on the other side of that. When the game dies and the energy comes out of it, I think we have the quality to take advantage of this group. If we do not meet that challenge early on, and they get ahead of steam up and they feel as though they can just run all over us, it will be an incredibly tough night. Incredibly tough.
Walker and Jack both were fantastic last week, and I think there's only maybe one half chance that I can remember that kind of got through them. What have you been focusing on with them this week against, like you said, a very different style of play, and especially how important it is against Red Bulls to just win every second ball?
Yeah, look, the first ball, the two guys that played up front last week, I mean, the big difference straight away is they play two through the middle, or have done. There's a lot of more direct service into those guys. There's a tremendous energy to win, as you've said. Anything that is dropped down, won by us, and if it's flicked on, they've got players that are breaking in behind and trying to, create these quick actions that are not easy to deal with. It happens on multiple occasions. You get service coming in from all angles. You get players shooting and trying to create from all angles. They're different to a lot of teams. The one thing we can say is that they will not stop working. They will not stop trying to put us under pressure. And whenever that moment comes in the game, in either half, where there is a moment to take a deep breath, because there always is, we have to notice that. We have to be clever enough and sensible enough to try and navigate that in a slightly different way and take advantage of it, because they're the times that they're at their weakest. They're at their strongest when they're on the front foot, they're winning everything, they're working the ball in behind the back line, and they're putting you under pressure in your half of the field. That's when they're at their best.
And then last one for me. Obviously, Dax, Sean, and Alex are all veterans and established pros, but from your experience, how do you manage the expectations of guys going back and facing off against their former team, and what kind of, if any, motivation does it provide them?
But yeah, I mean, Sean played last week and, would expect to be in and around that starting group. For the other guys, it's slightly different. Their mindsets, will, I'm sure, look back on times that they've been there. I think Dax's era was very different to Alex's era, just purely because of the way Red Bull went about their business. The likes of Thierry in the group are very different to the way that they look now, and especially the way they play. So I would think they've got slightly different emotions, but I would also think that both of those guys are looking forward to going back and being around the group in this fixture. Red Bull Arena was their home at one point, and they'll know their way around that field. And at whatever point it is that these guys are needed, that they are in the right place mentally, physically, and they can add to the group and offer us something that's going to tip us over the edge and earn us points at the weekend.
Thank you, Coach. Sean Davis will join us. Your return to your former club. How have you prepared for it? What are your feelings?
Yeah, from professional side, this is another game, another opportunity for us to pick up 3 points. I think for our goals this season, every game is extremely important, and I think that we started off on the right foot against NYCFC at home. But again, I think we want to tap into the strong road form that we had last year, and so that starts on Saturday in a very difficult place to play. Personally, I'm really excited about it. Just excited to be back in front of my friends and family and back playing against a club that did so much for me, and I'm really grateful for my time in New York. And so it's going to be fun to be back, sharing that experience with guys like Dax and Alex, and then being able to see everyone at the club that's really helped me get to where I am today. So it's going to be a great experience, and I hope that we can get the 3 points.
Thank you, Sean.
This one for me.
Go ahead, Frank.
What do you expect from there's a bit of a carryover, but I know that every year is different. What do you expect from seeing guys for the first time, and what do you expect from the crowd? Yeah, well, fortunately, in preseason we were able to play Red Bull, and so it was great seeing those guys after a year where we weren't able to play them. So great getting into that routine again. But as far as being back at the stadium with the fans, again, I think that they were great for me, my entire time there. And I only have amazing memories at that club. And so, like I said in my interview when I first arrived here, this was the right step for me, but I couldn't have been here without Red Bull and those experiences. And so we ended on great terms, and
I wish them nothing but the best, and I think that they've proven under Gerhard, he's been a great coach. He's one of the great coaches in this league, and they've improved every single year with him. So I expect this year to be no different. They're a top contender in the East, and I know that they have big goals as well.
Bob, any questions?
How much confidence in that win last week give you going into this one?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of positive takeaways. I think we were able to see a lot of things that we stressed in preseason, and to see it all come together was awesome. Of course, there's things that we can improve upon, like our second half, where we can be a little more dominant, but I think overall it was a really strong performance. And again, for us to reach the goals that we've set for each other, our standards at this club, we need to bring that week in, week out. And so it's a great first step, but there's a long way to go. It's a long season, and so we have to be able to replicate that performance week in, week out, at home, on the road. And so it's on us to bring that same energy again.
We are going to transition to the Zoom. Team, go ahead.
Yeah, is it weird? It feels like it's weird to me to play a team so early in the season that you played in preseason, and does that kind of change the way you approach this game because you just saw them so recently?
Yeah, I think they got the better of us in preseason, in terms of the result. And so I think it was actually good for us to experience that intensity that they bring, experience that style. So again, maybe I'm looking at the glass half full, but I think it was worthwhile for us to get a run out against them, and it's a chance for us to get a result this time. Again, it's not going to be easy, but I think it is fresh in our minds about their energy, about their intensity, the way that they approach the game. It's so unique, and so it's going to be challenging, especially at Red Bull Arena, but I do think it was beneficial for us to see them early on in preseason and be able to play against them again.
Tim, any other
And
questions?
then you mentioned,
Yeah.
yeah, I got one more. You mentioned Gerhard there. I think you played 1 year under him when he came in. Is that right? So, obviously what Red Bull does generally is known throughout the league. What did you see that was different in what he did than what, say, Jesse before him did?
Yeah. So I was fortunate to play under a number of great coaches there. Jesse, Chris Armas, and Bradley Carnell, who's now at St. Louis. And, and then actually Gerhard came for his first game was a playoff game against Columbus. So that's pretty interesting. But, I think that he did a great job of bringing the group together. The group got younger, and he was able to get everyone to pull in the same direction. He's a great manager. Aside from the tactics that he has, he's just great at connecting with guys, and that was super beneficial for me that year. And so he came into my career at a really important time and helped get the best out of me. And like I said, I don't think I would be here without his guidance, without his support. And so I'm really grateful to have played under him. I do think he's a great coach in our league. And, like I said, every year that they've been able to improve, and, they bring it every single game despite having a young team.
Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, Sean, obviously New York City FC and Red Bulls are pretty much as far on opposite sides of the spectrum as you can get in terms of play style. What's that transition like, switching from prepping for NYCFC to Red Bulls, and how has that been in training this week?
Yeah, we have to turn the page quickly because I think you're spot on. They are two different teams with two totally different approaches, and so it was good to get momentum in that first game, but I think that the understanding is that this game will be a completely different beast, a different style of play, away obviously, a difficult place to play, difficult environment, and so we have to be ready for their intensity from minute one, and that's not always easy to replicate just because of that intensity that they bring is so different from anything you'll face in the league. And they're a top team. They had a strong year last year. They can hurt you in a number of different ways. They have a lot of strong attackers, and they brought in some big pieces as well. So it's important for us to be ready from the opening whistle. That's really the best way to prepare against a group like this, and use our energy to kind of combat theirs and have a strong start. I think that's key to getting a result.
And then last one for me, going up against your former teammates, do you go at it with them at all in the week? Do you trash talk at all, or do you try to save it for the field on Saturday?
No, I haven't spoken to any of them since preseason. I was able to have great conversations with them, after our preseason game, and that was a lot of fun for me because I do have a strong connection with those guys, being the captain there. And that year that we went through was definitely difficult at times, but we had a strong finish to the year, which is something that I'll always remember. And so it is a group that I was close with. I'll continue to be close with, but I think we all know that this is a business, and it's all about turning the page and being able to bring it for 90 minutes. And so that's how I'm approaching this. I know that's how they're approaching this. And once we cross the line, it's all about 3 points.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate you.